Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Garcia, and I am from the Foundation for Media Alternatives, an NGO that is based in the Philippines, and we assist individuals and organizations in their strategic and appropriate use of information and communications technologies for popular democratization and empowerment. So I will be serving as your moderator today. I am so excited because we'll be discussing a very timely issue, and this will be about feminist environmental advocacy in the digital era. We know that women have always played a critical role in development, and they are likewise impacted by the interrelationship of sociocultural, political, economic, and even environmental conditions. And when environmental disasters arise, it is always the women, children, and other marginalized groups like LGBT persons who are disproportionately affected. And it's because of the roles and tasks that they are assigned to, such as taking care of the land, being carers for children and their families, being resource managers, first responders, and the like. This burden is even aggravated by poverty, violence, and discrimination, which drives them to be severely affected as environmental conditions worsen. So women farmers, for instance, face greater obstacles in acquiring climate resilient agricultural knowledge and skills due to the disproportionate amount of unpaid care and domestic work that falls on women. Unequal access to financing and technology always also limit women's capacity to invest in climate resilient livelihoods. The Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, recognize that advances in technology can translate scientific knowledge into tangible benefits in the daily lives of women and help lessen inequality, especially for those living in developing countries. Now, at the same time, technology also poses risks to women, such as loss of job opportunities as automation replaces workers in the near future. So for today's discussion, what we'll do is to focus on how vulnerable groups, including women, children, LGBT persons, are impacted by climate change and what efforts can be done to mitigate um, the effects of disasters, for instance, including how we can maximize the use of technology to help us create a better world for our future generation. So today, I'm glad that we are joined by our feminist friends who are passionate about the work that they do, including their work with different sectors of society and their work on environmental issues. Um, First, we have Matcha Phorn-In, who is the executive director of Sangsan Anakot Yawachon, a civil society organization working with young people from marginalized communities, many of whom are indigenous, and they work in disaster-prone Thai villages at the border with Myanmar. So Matcha is from an ethnic minority and identifies as a lesbian feminist human rights defender. Her organization supports women to become leaders and raise their community's awareness regarding human rights, gender equality, and issues of sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sexual characteristics. Matcha? Or perhaps what we can do is show the video first, no?
Sangsan Anakot Yawachon is a youth development project that has been working with indigenous youth in Thailand, Myanmar, Karen state border since 2008. Mae Samlap is one village of Sopmei district, Mae Hong Son province, where many of indigenous people are stateless. We are working to empower all stateless youth from Mae Samlap who need support to go to school and continue higher education. This video clip was produced in April 2016 when Sangsan staff did their fieldwork and visited our scholarship students' family in Mae Samlap during their long vacation, which our scholarship students went back home from the boarding school. At the time, they stayed with their family. Working at NGO, we have tried to working with youth and their family in order to understand their context and develop the empowering process for them. Please feel free to learn more about Sangsan scholarship student background and our project.
Thank you so much. When you see the video, you can see the geological, how the village look like. But I can also describe about the context that I am working with. My work is related a lot about my experience at ethnic minority who are born in the border between Thai and Laos. Being ethnic minority in Thailand, the law and policy do not recognize you, many rights that supposed to be applied in terms of protection and protection of violence against women, children, and also ethnic minority do not fully apply. So it's made me hardly to access to education or participation of the any kind of development that related to my life and my resilience of my community. So therefore, this pushed me forward in terms of acknowledge the children rights, the ethnic minority and indigenous rights, as well as all the rights that apply to our livelihood. I working then when I am grow up and done my education. So I went to work in the border area where is armed conflict still ongoing, nearly I think around 70 years. That is the longest um, war in the world, which is the war between armed group called Karen and also the military of Myanmar. So the conflict left behind a lot of people citizenships, meaning that the people both sides who are indigenous unable to access to national ID card, both Myanmar and also Thai citizens. I am focusing on empower young people who mean to be the heart of development and education, but because of their holding stateless status, and that's why access to education is a kind of barrier for them. Without going to the school, young people, children will face it forced marriage, for example, unable to fully protected by law and policy. So that's why we are put the children and youth at the heart of developments. In terms of LGBTIQ, as myself identify as a lesbian, we have found that when we are empower young people, many of them finally overcome and identify themselves as non gender conforming and also LGBTIQ, for instance. So this is our context. And then when we develop our work, we found that the core value, how we can address all the barrier in terms of access to justice and environmental justice for indigenous people who are holding stateless status. We are create the program called Human Rights Education Program, which is aim to empower women, children, and also LGBTIQ, and also address all the barrier in terms of access to national resource and also or government providing in terms of um, educations and also healthcare, for example. And the other program that we aim to address the barrier is the Feminist Participatory Action Research, which is try to address the situation of land rights and also environmental rights. The last program that we are aim to empower all the women and children as well as the feminists is we are open the feminist school, which is online platform for connected the feminists, and many of them are the marginalized groups. And also we are open the women's school, which the need of the woman and the woman. When we are working with women and students, we found that many of them unable to going to the went to the school when they are so young because of the armed conflict. So the women told us that they want to go to school. So then we opened the school and we are involving the women who never go to school in their life. And we found that this is the key of development and also sustain their futures, and also mean to put the woman in the heart of development. So this is overall our program, our issues. Um, yeah, and you may asking about how it related to internet. When we are working to empower the women students, mostly are facing the barrier in terms of access to technologies, which is true. However, the internet play a very crucial role in terms of advocacy, because we need to promote indigenous right, women right, and children right. And that's why the first thing that we use the internet and also online platform is to create an opportunity for advocacy. However, the challenging that you may imagine of is in terms of access and also safe and security. Uh, and nowadays, we are facing a lot of restriction in terms of law. For example, in Thailand, we have the Computer Crime Act, which is um, um, uh, the government and developments use that to controlling or to silence human rights defender. As you may heard about the news in Thailand. For example, now the pro-democracy faces the situation of less majesty law. The number high is at 35 within 2 weeks. A lot of people are young, feminists, and also LGBTIQ who are trying to advocate for democracy and human rights. So this is how internet is related to our work. Um, do you
Yes,
want me
Matcha.
to continuing, or you
Matcha,
want to
yes,
ask any
I
question?
will ask a question first. First of all, thank you for sharing the work that you do. I'm quite impressed by what you are doing there at the northern part of Thailand. Because I know it's difficult, right, to be working with indigenous peoples. You are at the border and there is conflict that is going on there. So how do you actually sustain your work considering all those things? And then you even have disasters that come in, along your way, whenever monsoon season comes in, maybe you have the flooding and then maybe forest fires in summer. So how difficult is it working in that region?
I think it's very difficult because the climate change and environmental is mean, you know, livelihood of the people that we are working with. And when the right to access to national resource or right to land is restricted, women, children, and LGBTIQ got impact from that. Meaning that they are unable to access to food, um, herb, and also cannot sustain their livelihood.
But what is
So
government?
this is challenge.
Yeah, but what is government doing?
Uh,
If you say there is not much access to education, to food, etc. So what is government doing? At least local government, if not the national government.
at all level, actually. I need to give a little bit of background that Thailand do not acknowledge indigenous rights, do not recognize indigenous people as indigenous, meaning that the human rights mechanism that mean to protect the indigenous people do not apply to protect the indigenous in Thailand. How it look like. Right to land is not protected, meaning that all the indigenous in Thailand unable to have the how to say land rights.
Yes.
Access to national resource become controlling by law and policy. Uh, and that's why it's impact to the other consequence. For example, when you're not acknowledged as the citizens, access to education, you need to present ID card, you need to present, that you can access to government support. When you go into the hospital, Thailand had a quite good luck in terms of universal healthcare, but it's applied only for the one who have the Thai ID card.
So
And then at UC, our community holding landed and uh, stateless status, meaning that they're not, Thai government do not recognize them as the Thai
recognize.
citizen.
So
Yeah.
is that for the whole of Thailand? All indigenous peoples in Thailand are not are not recognized as citizens. They do not pay sin, and as such they do not have identification, and so they are also stateless. Thus they are deprived of all the rights that they're supposed to have, of all the services that they are supposed to get. Is that true
I think
for
this is
all indigenous peoples in Thailand?
yeah, I think this is applied to all indigenous in Thailand. One, all indigenous do not acknowledge as indigenous. And then meaning that the government do not providing interpreters. Imagine of 30, 40 years ago, all indigenous people do not go to school, and then they cannot speak Thai. And then when they need to apply to the Thai citizens, they are unable to speak with the government. This is the first situation that a lot of indigenous faces, that they are cannot communication with the local authority, and also at the policy level is not admitted. There is no interpreters. It's made a lot of indigenous around Thailand are being stateless. That is one situation. And the second situation is the around border of Thailand. Normally, the people are the same ethnic cities, are the same indigenous people. It's finally the land is, line up, and then they divided the people into, national, different national. And then, imagine of when the Thai government checking and they name that, oh, I'm just from that side of the river. Finally they become Burmese in mindset of the Thai
I
government. This
see.
is also the border situation that actually in both sides do not acknowledge the people in terms of the policy, not address the need, not address the barrier for indigenous people to access to nationalism, national nation, citizenship status, for
Right.
example. So I
Yeah.
think this is about recognize, and also this is about the law and policy do not apply to protect it. But the government create a lot of law policy to controlling the people, because the government felt that this is not Thai. Therefore, anything that the Thai government need to spend the tax, it need to mean something. So that's why this is create a lot of barrier for indigenous people who are
Y-
own the country before the country.
Yes, yes. I was about to say these peoples, they have been there for ages. They have stayed there. They have tilled the land. They have cultivated it. They have developed the areas, and yet they are not recognized, and they're not given the, well, number one is the recognition. Number two is the services that they have, the rights that they are supposed to receive. So you said that you have your organization, you have programs for uh, this group. So you would have family schooling, you have, education for women, and then scholarship. for the young people. So um, this is, I think this is important. When you start educating them, then they learn the language also. Then they're able to speak to policymakers and speak to power about their rights. So, how many scholars have you had already, and how are they now?
Um, we have been working at least 300 young people each year in terms of promote the human rights education. Uh, in the past 15 years, we must empower already 3 to 4,000 indigenous people within this area. We supported the scholarship for more than 1,000 young people to went to high school and also university. At least 100 of them are completed higher and high school, for example, like vocational training and also university. We have one who are now took the taking the PhD class in Chiang Mai University. So the successfully of our scholarship program play the very important role that many of young people who are participation in our program now return home at the change maker. Some of them working at NGO, some of them working at the human rights educators, some of them are working at the teacher in the school and also working at the health sectors at the community level. So actually we are already have a seed of change at the community level. Mm. And now we are move on. We are closed the scholarship program 3 years ago because we are faced the lack of access to resources. However, all of young people that we are supported are returned home. So now we went to the community and also started to address the human rights situation and women rights situation. And that's why we found that the woman is the one who are faced um, abusive by abused by law and policy that not mean to protect them. For example, um, uh, um, reproductive health and rights, or land rights, or access to national ID card. So all of that made us create the school at the community level, meaning that we are expand our work to working directly with the women who are the heart of change. For example, if the woman has the power to to be the leader, to be a part of development, the woman will talking about their livelihood, the woman will talking about food, the woman will talking about land right, and the most importantly, the woman will protect the child in terms of marriage, in terms of access to education. So and that's why now we are targeted to open the women's school and bring the young people who empowered to be a trainer, to be a facilitator, to train the women at the community level. This is the most exciting that actually the women's school led by, our formal scholarship students who are complete their development program with us and now created the opportunity to the other women.
Yeah, that's a great program. So, do you think, Matcha, that with these young people returning and knowing more about their rights after being educated, do you think that this time around their voices will be listened to by government, and that they will be included in when it comes to making policies and decisions about the community that they belong to? Are they being
Yes,
listened to already?
yeah, indeed, I can give an example of successful story. We are empowered a lot of stateless young people. For example, one young people that we are empowered, she was bisexual, indigenous, and former stateless. She just got Thai citizen 2 years ago. And after she got Thai citizen by herself, actually, we empower them to go into to went through the process. She understand the process, and now she already helping nearly 200 of her community members to access to the Thai citizens. And she also the ones who are bringing young people together to lead the feminist participatory action research on land rights. And when the COVID-19 hit the community, her group is the one who went house by house to ask the women how it impacts. So she found that her community member faced hunger because they have no money. They cannot access to national resource because it's controlled by law and policies. And finally, she raised her voice that my community need help. So we started fundraising programs. So which help 1,300 community members to get food delivered and also to address the situation. Finally, these groups that we are working with for 15 years, they overcome and the solutions. They are now conduct the COVID-19 feminist participatory action research, which means to address the impact of the COVID-19, but at the same time to recovering from the COVID-19. During the process of everything that we do, for example, feminist participatory action research, we also create an opportunity for them to dialogue in the local level. So the young people dialogue with the local government, talking about the situation, ask the government to support food, to protect the people. But the government told them that they don't have, there is no policy to support stateless people. And that's why this group went to the central government. We went to the parliament. We talking about what happened. We asking for some policy to respond to stateless people, to migrant workers, to refugees when the Thai government left behind. So this is the benefits from empower young women who are LGBTIQ, who are experience of being stateless. Finally, when they understand all of that, they are the leader of community and fight at all level to seek for something that never happened is, be a part of policy. So she not only speak in the national level, we also join a lot of online platform at the regional level and global level in terms of address the need and respond to the crisis faced by marginalized people, faced by indigenous people. So this is the answer that when we empower the women, when we empower the young people, they finally the solutions, and they're not only solution for themselves, but they also the solution for climate justice and also gender justice, as well as the equity of technology and internet.
Yes, it's actually nice to hear about such a success story, Matcha, because it can inspire other people, especially young people, that they too have voices and they can reach, people, authorities, people in power, not just in Thailand, but even overseas, the United Nations, for instance. So, how has I would just like to go back. You mentioned that the internet has played a role actually in the advocacy of your organization and also in the work that the other members or the community that you work with they're able to use technology. So in the schools that you will have, for instance, the women's school, will are you also planning to set up, uh, to teach them skills, computer skills, so that women can access other benefits that technology may offer them?
Um, Before we talking about how technology can create the opportunity for us as an organization and for the women that we are working with as individual and also collectively, we also need to address the barrier. So the women and the young people that we are working with are facing the barrier in terms of access to, for example, Wi-Fi devices that very expensive, and all of it is also impact to environmental, all the material is actually made underground, from the all the national resources, and then when the people spend that, it somehow it creates some kind of land grabbing. So actually this also something that we need to think about. On the other issue is also the barrier in terms of the internet securities and also sexual harassment, and also controlling of data and information by the governments. And also the internet and online platform is the platform that not only us who use to advocate for human rights, but some group are used that to promote hatred, to promote homophobia, for instance. So this is all the barrier that being women and also indigenous and LGBTIQ face this barrier. And that's why when we are trying to bring internet as an opportunity, we need to address all of that. And unfortunately, our women who are at the village unable to writing and also cannot reading. So that's why our feminist school started from, bring the young people who are empowered to teaching about languages. Women started now to writing their name, to learn about alphabet, to learn about how to speak Thai, because they need that when they go to the hospital, when they go to, contact with the Thai authority. So this is the first step that we did. But the second step that we are now trying to develop, women finally named that they need economic justice. Now they face hunger, the COVID-19 impact them. So they want to produce something to sell. And that means that we need to create opportunity in online platform to bring the products from the women to sell online. But the women themselves hardly to use that platform. So we are strengthen our young people to help to create platform, to help to translation, to help to produce the video that will help the women from the community to promote their products that will see overall Thailand. And this is our other program that we are now develop for the next year is the economic empowerment in order to address the economic crisis and also COVID-19. So this is the second priority that we are prioritizing, that how we can use the internet, to advancing economics and also to advancing women human rights. In the third level, as you are speaking about, we are working with the community, but at the same time, we working at the school as well. So we found that sexual harassment is not only in the offline platform, like when you walking or, women have been controlling a lot how they look like, how they wear, how they express themselves. LGBTIQ also oppressed so much in terms of expression and also sexual expressions. So we are trying to address that in terms of training. But at the same time, we are empower everyone who are participation of our trainings in terms of use the technologies for advancing human rights. At the same time, use the internet, how to use it safely, how to protect your data, how to set up the very strong passwords, and what is the law that maybe will make you face a difficulty. For example, in Thailand, you cannot talking about monarchy because of some law is actually like can can put you in jail from 3 to 15 years. So all of that, the young people they need to understand. So we in the other level, we also empower the young people to understand about, the risk and also how to use that safely. The last level that we use is to use the online platform to promote the human rights and also to challenging the patriarchy. Uh, the man is controlling everything, at all level, at the community level, at the school, at the government sectors, and Thailand now is who is the most powerful sector is the military. So as you can see, the patriarchy very strong, and when the patriarchy become very strong, women, children, and also LGBTIQ got impacts. We found in our research that 100% of the women face domestic violence. 100% of the young people that we are working with experience of, physical and also mental as well as sexual harassment at the household level and also at the school and society levels. So all of that, we bring it into the online platform. One, to write awareness, the norm that mean to oppress the woman. We are trying to use that to promote the protection of children, women, and LGBTIQ. A lot of our members speak a lot to the media. We are conduct a lot of online platform and seminars and webinar to explain about what is going on at the community level, what happened to women and children. This is the fourth level that we are trying to use online platform to advocate. I hope this answers your question. Or
Yes, actually.
lastly, in terms of land right and environmental rights, so actually it's the other component that impact to actually physically and also geologically. But we also try to now to combine between the internet and also environmental rights and also land rights, because we need to bring this situation, this issue to the online platform and use the online platform, to tackle the situation to data, right, for example.
So and the different challenges that the explaining to us how tech rights to educate not just the community but also perhaps the entire Thai population to educate them about the rights of indigenous peoples. So you mentioned that access is one of the barriers. It's difficult to access it. Maybe it's expensive, the affordability, maybe it's etc. So I was just wondering, are there also community networks in that part of Thailand that are working with communities like indigenous peoples so that they can be provided with the access that they need to, to be able to communicate and with other people to be able to, express themselves and uh, in general connect with the rest of Thailand and the world.
Yeah, land right, for example, is actually bring indigenous movement to focusing in that area so much. But now, as you see, you're asking like, is there any organization talking about the internet, the access for women, children, or indigenous people? I can say that it's still really limitation in terms of understanding and in terms of, capacities. So I think this is the barrier that we have to promote. Like all the indigenous organization and also our movement need to also empower about one, we know it's important, but at the same time, we need to demand our needs and to demand the resources for its aim. On the other hand, the Thai governments are setting some small scale that providing the internet at the community level. But as I told you, it's very limitation in terms of number of computers, and a lot of young people went there to use for not education but for play games, and they faced a lot of harassment. So our second demand is that not only need to demand the tax, that the government need to buy more computers at the community level, but at the same time, they need to working with us as the experts to ensuring that the young people and indigenous, and also will understand about not only how to use but also how to use that as a safe and also concerning around the security as well. So I think this is the second demand that we need from our movement and also from the government, is to demand the awareness around the internet and the media. So when those two come together, I think that there will be the third level that we are trying to doing now, is to ensure that the young people is the empowered to be the leaders of that initiatives. They need to bring their issue, they need to bring the technologies, and they need to promote the different uh, ways how to use the internet, because the internet now is more like the young people use that for entertainment. So we are trying to bring that to use that to advocate, to use that to develop, to amplify voice, to use that to not only promote human rights but at the same time fight combat the online harassment. So I think this is we need to third demand to ensure that there will be the resource to empower the young people. And when the young people they become the leaders, they also need
Thank you, Matcha, for stating those different demands that you have for government. So, what about these platform companies? Because you mentioned that violence against women online happens as well, and then there are other, aside from that, other the restriction of rights can also happen online. So, any demands also from platform companies, from big technology, on how they can help
thank you. I
communities?
think sure. I think that is very important question, and we always forgot about the business sectors and also the providers. In one hand, the business sectors is during the COVID-19, everything kind of stopped. We cannot working much, we cannot traveling, but the business sectors still ongoing their work and their benefits. So we actually need to demand from the business sectors and the money institution that working around money, to ensure that they are comply with the business and human rights, meaning that they need to invest on empower women and children, and also they need to support the access to technologies for women and children. That is the first demand to all the business that actually benefit a lot from women life, and also from children, and from LGBTIQ, and from indigenous people. But in terms of providers, for example, Facebook, we found that during the COVID-19, a lot of sexual harassment in online and a lot of hate threats is ongoing in Facebook. I think this is, for example, how providers need to working with us in terms of to address the human rights, the most importantly also to protect it ourselves as a human rights defenders. Facebook or WhatsApps or any providers can play a very important role at that point. In the other level also they need to ensure our right to privacy. So a lot of our data, especially if you are human rights defender, now we are unable to trust the providers. We are scared, in what we did in the past, which is nothing to restriction, but now it became a restrictions. So it's a question as well, if the Thai government, for example, or Philippines government needs our data from the Facebook. The Facebook will protect us, or the Facebook will need to give the data to the government because of the government will use the national law to enforce the providers. With the national law is not sometimes comply with the human rights. This also need to be questioned about internet governance and also the human right in terms of data privacy, especially if we are some vulnerability, for example, human rights defender, LGBTIQ, and the young people as well. When we're talking about the young people, a lot of young people aged under 15, they use Facebook, and there is a grooming in terms of sexual exploitations, and some people, it's not only people like us who are respect the right of the young people. There is some people who are benefit a lot from sex exploitations and also child exploitation, pornography, for example. What is the provider will protect the child when you just typing you 20 years old, but actually you 12 years old, and added provider care about it. So I think this needs to be a very long dialogue with the providers, that not only about privacy data that need to protect it, but also human rights of women, children, and also young people. I think needs to be demand. And as you see, sometimes they don't care about our voice. We reach out to Facebook sometimes when some human rights page shut down because of against the standards. But a lot of hatred that's supposed to against the human rights standards of the Facebook, they are not shut down that page, but they shut down when we are use the sexual expression to advancing body autonomy, for example. They shut down Facebook page. So all of that need to be dialogue, and also need to ensure that we are part of this kind of developments, and this is our futures, because the young people are now spend 6 to 8 hours. This is our our how to say our uh, this is what we found when we are working with the young people. They are in the online at least 6 to 8 hours a day. So this is need to dialogue a lot about the provider, and they need to also setting some regulation that comply with human rights and gender sensitivity as well.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of areas already. And I would actually want to commend your organization because of the approach that you have when it comes to working with indigenous peoples with issues of land rights, because the approach is very feminist and you consider the intersectionality of the people that especially of the women that you work with, and that is important. And also you put them, people, the population at the center of your of the work that you do. So congratulations for the work that you do. Yeah, and I think yeah, any last words that you would want to say? Is there something else that you would want to um, uh, I don't know, advise our
Um,
listeners, or so that people can learn from the work that you do?
think we are now in the period of transformative for our formal practice when the COVID not come, when the internet not come. Like we have our own practice when we are setting, meeting like physically, we meet, we talk to each other. It's a kind of, quite safe because no one record. And now we turn to the situation that we need to use the online platform a lot. Like, for example, this year we have no international conference at all in terms of physically, but we use online. I think this also need to talk a lot about how to ensure the the online platform that we use are protected and protected us who are the user, but it's also to sustain our movement because COVID-19 will impact at least 2-3 years, and global south will not impact mass from the vaccination. We cannot accept that equally with the global north.
Yes, I agree with you.
It, yeah, that is one thing, right? The second thing I think is the conflicted between the concept. For example, like indigenous rights. We're talking a lot about collective rights. We not really talk much about the individual right. For example, women are, we talk a lot about collectively, but also individually women also need to be empowered and to be acknowledged at their own rights. As you see, when we put privacy and also collective, it's quite not going the same way. So now we are trying to combine about how we can ensure the individual's rights, and also how we can um, bring that together as the collectively, because the young people now they are not only growing up in their own community, they growing up in outside of communities, and many things that rooted themselves when they are young is not applied for them when they come to the society at large. So I think in terms of concept, we need to ensure that our indigenous right also more working on protected individual, especially young people, LGBTIQ, and also women, and
Yeah,
also
maybe
society also.
maybe the preservation of the culture as well, the culture of the indigenous
Yeah,
peoples. I think technology
yeah,
as
I
well
think
can help in that way.
right. That is my two concern that we are trying to we can working together in terms of intergenerations, and also
Yes.
filling the gap among generation, and that we can have the meaningful of transformative in recent situations. So I think of that.
Yes. So thank you very much, Matcha, for sharing with us your work and your very rich experience of working with the community. So before we end, I think we should play a video from your organization.
Yeah. Before play the video, I need 30 seconds to explain a little
Yes,
bit.
please.
This video filming by the young indigenous people during the International Day of Rural Women. We are trying to promote the right of rural women, which is the indigenous one, stateless. This video produced by the young people, indigenous young people. They are interview their own mothers, their own communities. But at the same time, as you see, we use the online platform. We use the technology to amplify voice, to change the narrative, and to address the needs of the women. So please feel free to see our video. Thank you so much.
ตานี่ตาว่าอย่าพูดในอุทอป้าตาทอจูแล้วอัดทอจูเสร็จนี่เลยว่าหมอเสร็จป้าตากระจายป้าตาอุเล็กเขาอุตนี่บ่าแต่ฮิเดตะกี้ฮิเดตว่าอัตโกดเอาโคจีตาว่าด้วยนะกระจายเมสาจีเล่เสียเลยเอาไว้เลยจีอามาพูดเลยจีมูเลยจีนี่ก็ว่ามูลนี่พูดนี่ว่าปากตาคือเอาปากตาคือเราเจ็บมั้งตาลอยาหิวอะไรแต่หลบปอดตาบ้าตาลอยกินนะตุ๊กโตจีบ้าตาจีตาลอยกินเลยหิพลาเราเกิดระโลกหิพอกูเราเกิดระรู้มาอุดบุลบ้ามุคุมิจุเลยมีที่เดียวโดนล้อ
ที่เดได้ตากระปาโลตู้ที่เดหลอดจะวีบาที่เมดูเราบ้ายูเล่ที่หลอดที่ได้ติกลาตาบอกโคแล้วเกิดระตาบ้ายูระแต่รูปเลยระที่เดตู้เดดีอาโพอาบ้าอุเด็กตัวใหญ่แล้วก็ตลอดได้เลยดีแต่โอ้ก็เกิดเลยก็จะที่เดียวดีแต่พี่อามาตาแล้วโอ้ก็เกลือมั้งดีแต่ป้าหาตู้นั้นเนี่ยตาลอยดีแต่มาตาตัวหล่อตลอดก็จะฮิโลแต่มาเดี๋ยวล็อกเลยเป็นนิคลุนิจิเจมันนะแต่ก็รู้แต่พอรู้ว่าใจเป็นทำมาเสียไปอุจิจันล็อกเลยโอ้เดี๋ยวละเล็กผมนะโอ้เดี๋ยวกูยังวิจิมาอุจิจันใช่นี่เนาะยันนี่ยิ่งยากกว่าเท่านี้นะแกนี่ยันตลอดนี่จ้าหัวเดี๋ยวยันโดนท่อโจ้ที่ก็เป็นนักเปิดอะมั้งเดี๋ยวตลอดเลยก็จะฮีก็จะโคน้องก็บ้านเลยก็จะตลอดก็จะฮีปูเวเลยพูนักนี่ก็ท่อบ้านโจ้อะต่อทอดคอหมอโลดมาเจอมั้ง
เลือกตัวบุญว่าโอ้ผมมือเลือกแก LVT เนี่ยอะไรสิมั้งบอกแก LVT เนี่ยอาบัติเราจะ discrimination เนาะบอกโพเลือกแกว่าย้อนตัวกูวันนี้เจนี่คนนี้ว่าได้หนึ่งแกเชื่อเลือกบัตรท่อเลือกบางบ้านท่อกี่รอบเกเลยท่อกี่รอบ LVT ได้ค่อยได้อย่าง